Welcome to this year's first session of Under the Gold Dome. As you know, last session we had several opportunities to talk with people who had interest in the things that we were doing here at the Capitol. And so now what we're going to do today is talk to the gentlemen that have the most influence down here, my colleagues. We have James Beverly, we have William Boddie, and Bob Trammell. And I'm going to let them tell you what their respective jobs are, because I know a lot of you think we're up in Washington, and we're not. We're actually downtown Atlanta. But we have some very specific things that these gentlemen are responsible for. And then we're going to talk about policy and the kinds of things that we hope to accomplish during this 2019 session of the General Assembly. So why don't we just start with you and we work our way back on.
Thanks, Representative Bruce. Thanks for doing this show. So I'm James Beverly, the chairman of the House Democratic Caucus. My sole responsibility is to take care of our members. And so I set the agenda, make sure that I raise money for the caucus, and actually appoint committee membership, which now we appointed you chairman of the Voting Rights Committee.
And you already put me to work.
And he started, so we're going to have some good stuff coming out of that committee. So looking forward to this year.
Okay.
Representative William Boddie, House District 62, South Fulton, and Douglas County. I'm proud to share both delegations with my friend, Representative Roger Bruce. First of all, I'm here as the House Minority Whip to assist the leader, Bob Trammell, in all of our policy endeavors, but also to make sure we get our accurate whip reports on time to our membership, which kind of tells our members the synopsis of bills that's going to hit the House floor for votes. We also make sure that we keep those votes in line when we ever have a caucus position. So I'm here to serve the caucus, and I'm glad to be here today, Representative Roger Bruce.
Thank you.
So I'm Bob Trammell. I'm the Democratic leader in the House, and principally the responsibility of the leader is to help lead the caucus in the argument on the floor procedurally and help shape the caucus's argument in terms of policy and the agenda for the caucus.
Okay. And all of these things combined, you know, you guys often hear me talk about a baseball team.
Yeah.
And all of us have to play our part on that team. And, you know, I'm Roger Bruce, and while these guys are part of the leadership team, we are all part of the team that requires us to work together to make sure that we win the game. And there's going to be a lot of things that are going to be coming up. So why don't we talk a little bit about the policy issues that we know are going to come up, and obviously we're just getting started, so we don't know everything, but I know that there are certain things that we've already basically started on. One is the voting issues.
Yes.
As many of you know, we've had a tremendous number of issues related to voting, and we'll talk about that a little bit more, but why don't you guys, and I'm going to let you decide who talks about what, but let's talk about those issues. You're the leader. What are the things that you're going to see?
So to give you sort of an outline and overview of what the issues that we're certainly going to advocate for as the Democratic caucus in the House, Medicaid expansion is our top priority.
That's good.
We filed that bill yesterday, House Bill 37.
Okay.
We also filed yesterday a bill, House Bill 36, for tuition-free technical college and expansion of the HOPE grant. But obviously elections are going to be, and voting rights issues are going to be a major topic of conversation in the legislative session this year. And we also are going to have a lot of pieces of legislation around gun safety and addressing the issue of gun violence.
Are there some specific bills that are already out on the topics that the leader just mentioned? Are there bills that you the whip, and are there things that we're already seeing that are going to cause problems for us?
Yeah, I will start by saying constitutional carry. That was a bill that was pre-filed last November, and I know most of our caucus members and non-caucus members have issues with that particular bill.
Talk about specifically what that bill does.
Well, what it would do is basically allow individuals in the state of Georgia to carry a firearm without having a license to carry a firearm, and pretty much in places that they have traditionally not been allowed to carry firearms. And it's a problem for a lot of different reasons. Of course, the safety problems, but also the individual, the legislator that filed the bill, looked at it as a Second Amendment bill to increase your Second Amendment right to bear arms, but it's going to have an effect where states that we have reciprocity with, such as South Carolina, if you don't have a license to carry a firearm in the state of Georgia, if you go across state lines in South Carolina, you're going to be in violation of the law.
So in essence, the bill would allow people to carry a gun without going through any process at all.
Yes.
Basically, like back to the old Wild Wild West. You get up in
Exactly.
the morning, you strap your gun on, and
Exactly.
and you're out. Is that the essence of it?
Exactly what it is.
Well,
Yes.
One thing it's concealed carry that the permit. So, presently under the law, you can have a gun in your car if it's in open view without a permit. But this would give people the ability to put one away where nobody could see, and
Yes.
you wouldn't have to have this carry permit.
And there's
Exactly.
nothing. And that kind of goes into the bill that I am actually sponsoring. That would, because you got these printers now where you can print things
Yes.
out, 3D, three-dimensional, and there are people printing guns and bullets, and then there's no serial number, there's no tracking of it, there's nothing. Somebody can come out, they shoot you with this thing, go back, melt it down, and make a pot out of it.
Exactly.
And so guns obviously are going to be one of the things that we're looking at. We also, voting is important, and I know
Yes.
that's important to you. Why don't we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so just this past year, I was on a SAFE committee, which is the committee to select the new voting machines. And they came out with a committee report after 4 meetings. And most of the committee report was pretty good. But there are some sticking things, some points that the Democratic House Caucus is taking on that the majority report didn't. And number one, foremost, is that we want hand-marked paper ballots.
Hand-marked paper ballots.
Hand-marked paper
I know
ballots.
that term is an important term.
Yes.
Right.
Talk about why.
The reason why is because when you do a hand-marked paper ballot, you have the ability to see that, okay, I voted for Bob Trammell, and I want to circle his name or X the name in. I know that I voted for Bob Trammell. I put that into a scan machine. It confirms that Bob Trammell's name was voted for, and then it's verifiable. So in the case that someone said I actually voted for William Boddie, and there's any problem with the election, you can go back, look at that ballot, and see what that person actually voted for.
Okay.
One of the foremost experts in our caucus on the issue, and it is going to be a big topic. But from my end, and I think what most people will have a hard time understanding about why we wouldn't go with hand-marked paper ballots is it's cheaper.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah,
lot
right.
I
cheaper.
understand that the governor is asking for
150.
$150 million.
Yes.
Right.
And I'm hearing from others that we could do this for about $50 million.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So exactly. So cost analysis doesn't
About
make sense.
half.
Yeah, and maybe
More
even
than
a
half.
third. Yeah, a third or even less than that.
Wow. And, to that end, as you indicated earlier, you guys have asked me to chair a committee that deals
Yes.
with this topic. And to that end, we're going to have a town hall meeting on the 30th
Okay.
of this month here at the Capitol, where we'll have people come in, experts come in, talk about these machines and talk about the issues that we've had in elections throughout the state. I was told today that Sarah Amico will be coming and participating with it in that program, and several community groups and others will be here to talk about voting.
Let me underscore that point. I mean, that's a huge point, and that is, for the first time in many years, the House Democratic Caucus has our own committees.
Yeah.
A lot of times we have not been able to get a hearing on the floor because Republicans control most of the committees.
Right.
Yeah.
This committee is a proactive committee to say to the state of Georgia and to the citizens of Georgia, we hear you, we're fighting for you, and please come out on January 30th to take a look at these voting machines.
Yes.
It is the one chance you have an opportunity to hear unbiased opinions from experts. Sarah Miko is going to be, I think John Barrow is now
John
confirmed
Barrow.
to come, and it's going to be a very, very good meeting. So please come out, and great job already. We hit the
Great
ground
Yeah,
running.
you
So
hit
just
me with
wanna-
this yesterday.
Yeah, so we're moving fast. You're the right man for the job.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, definitely right, man.
Some of the other things that obviously come to mind, education is always a big
Very big.
issue for us. We have, somebody, I don't remember which one it was, somebody mentioned about the technical colleges
Yes.
and the need to allow people now. It was my understanding that you can go to a technical college now if you're a Georgia resident. without having to pay. Is that changed?
Well,
or-
when Hope was originally created, that was the design of Hope, and now there are many courses of study where that's true, but it's not for any course of study.
Okay.
So what we're trying to do is expand that and get it back to the point where no matter what, if you want to continue your education, that you can do that and won't have to pay the tuition.
And is there a reason why we would limit that to just technical schools? Given, the fact that this state is now becoming, we hear it over and over again, we're the #1 state to do business. But in order to do business, you have to have people with the skill set to run those businesses. And that's not all technical.
Exactly.
So, would it not be appropriate, I don't know if I'm stretching it here, to consider fighting for anybody? If you are a resident in this state and you show an acumen to be able to participate in our economy, but you need some training, some help, wouldn't it be to our advantage to?
Yeah, I think it's actually a good point, and
very good point.
and so, but here's the thing, and I think we underscore this point, is the budget is a value statement from the party in charge. It's a value proposition,
Right.
and we value business at the base of the pyramid, whether it be technical colleges, because this bill is a reflection of what they're not doing for things that we think we can get through.
Yes.
We already know that it's dead on arrival.
Yes.
If we try to say everyone can go to school for free.
Right.
We've tried that years past. It didn't go anywhere. But this is an attempt to say, well, can we find common ground on a bill that moves the ball forward? And then in an attempt to do that over the next few years, let's get into the majority, and we'll certainly take that up, I suspect.
And let's help who we can now.
Yeah,
That's
help
what
who-
I'm
Right,
saying.
exactly.
And I know there are a lot of students that appreciate the Hope Scholarship. I know it's kind of gotten a little off course.
Yeah.
Because my understanding, the Hope Scholarship initially was to try to help
Yes.
underserved individuals in need to try to help them, but it's kind of become something else.
Yeah, and Raj, I appreciate you saying that, because I'm very proud to say that I received the Hope Scholarship as a graduate of Banneker High School in College Park in 1995, and at the time it was completely a need-based scholarship, and now it's more of a merit-based scholarship. But I think the leader and the chairman, we were working very hard. This bill, the Technical College Hope Bill, is basically also expanding the number of hours. Right now, you only have 30 hours of cumulative coursework that falls out of that grant. But now we're trying to expand to 95 hours, because if you get to 30 hours and you don't complete the coursework, then you have to apply for the Hope Scholarship to finish up. So we want to make sure that we give you, if you walk through that door, we want to make sure you finish with the certificate or the diploma that you were trying to
Yeah, I
receive,
know
or the
when-
associate degree.
When I was in high school,
Yeah.
which was, well, I'm looking around the table, that was probably longer than I used. But when I graduated from high school, I had the opportunity, we had to take a technical course. I took auto mechanics. I was in a military program, so when I graduated, I could have gone into the military as a non-commissioned officer, and then you had the college track. So when I graduated, I had 3 tracks that I could have taken, and you went through all of them with the idea being that everybody wasn't going to college. Seems like we've gotten away from that, but everybody's not going to college. So how do people, especially in a state like we have now, our industry along technical lines, we're becoming the Silicon Valley that there was in California. It's coming here. How do we get our folks ready for that?
I think workforce development, and I know, Roger, we've talked a lot about a lot of things, and we sat on a lot of different town halls and panels, but I think one of the ways that the House Democratic Caucus is doing that through criminal justice reform. Criminal justice reform is a mechanism to put individuals who have been convicted of non-property, non-violent crimes back into the workforce. I just spoke to some MARTA officials the other day. They have a shortage in MARTA drivers that are eligible right now to even drive. So what they want to do is to be able to hire individuals with nonviolent property offenses to get them back to where they need to be as far as working citizen with livable wages, but to also be able to fill a need that they have. Like, I would never imagine growing up in Atlanta that Marta would have a shortage of bus drivers. But I think this is one of the ways that our caucus is doing what we need to fill that void. And we have been filing bills, and we're going to aggressively file bills to expand on criminal justice reform.
Well, that's a good segue to talk about criminal justice reform and some of the issues. And, when you say criminal justice reform, that implies a one-way side, that we need to do something with criminals that are violating the law. But what about the other side of it? We have a lot of people, innocent people, who are being shot,
Yes.
who are being arrested and going through, the legal issues. I mean, so it's kind of like the flip side of the criminal justice reform. We want the justice
Yes.
reform too, not just the criminal justice, but justice. I'm going to throw that one to you.
Well, there's a lot of work. I mean, we've made progress in recent years in Georgia with the issue of criminal justice reform. But I think one thing that one of our members had last year and that we'll have again this year is some of the laws unnecessarily catch people. And our drug policy is an example. Last year there was a bill for decriminalization of marijuana under a certain else. And we need that.
Okay.
When people get snared in this, it has repercussions that follow them into the workforce as the whip was talking. And that is one of the areas that we need to look at and address.
Okay. And what about the flip side? It wasn't too long ago that the district attorney, I believe, was down in the new city of South Fulton.
Yeah.
She was the victim of a slider crime.
Slider
She was
crime,
pumping
yeah.
gas. I know that whoever did that did not want to have to go before that court down there. I
Yeah.
think they ended up in a different court.
Yeah.
But, we just had another incident recently where somebody tried to steal the mayor's
Yeah.
car
Yeah.
and her security car. They ended up shooting the
Yeah, they did.
perpetrator, I think.
Yeah.
But we've got a lot of issues going on right now that need to be addressed. What's your thoughts on how to?
Well, you can't legislate yourself into
Yeah.
a moral situation.
Yeah.
I think that one of the things that we have to be proactive around is when people commit crimes, there's a reason, whether it be lack of economics, lack of home training, if you will. We can't do some of those things. Some of the things we can do, like, for instance, in the nonviolent situations, those people, just because you make a mistake doesn't mean that you are a mistake. And we need to make sure that our policies are always reflective of redemption, right? And so when you think about redemption, you think about how do we incentivize folk to work on construction sites, to drive, to go to technical school. I mean, I have guys who work on work sites for me. I had 17 out of a community where if there's money that's coming out of the state government and you're putting that money in the community, the folk who are in that community should be able to work on those projects. And so just smart ways in which to incentivize communities that are having work done where those folk in the community can actually get a part of the deal flow.
And speaking of that, our budget has traditionally been in the range of about $25-26 billion. Is that about right?
All right.
And right now, a very small percentage of that goes to minority-owned businesses, small businesses. And the thought was, we have legislation that we would be putting forward to try to make that an equal playing field and give people an opportunity. But what is the strategy that we can employ? How do we get the people who are watching this video, how do we get them to be involved in what we're doing? And I guess, you've heard me say this before too, is that all of these different committees that we have down here, I'm one person on the committee, you're one person on the committee. If I get 100 people from my district to show up to say that I want something, the only person they can impact is me. They're not impacting the other people on the committee. Is that a fair statement? You guys have seen it too. So what can you guys say to whoever's watching this video to encourage them to get involved in what we're doing?
I would say just Stay connected with your legislator on the state level, the local level, and the county level. A lot of times, our constituents don't know who their state representative or who their state senator is. I always tell constituents, pull out your phone, www.openstates.org.
Okay.
Because
Say that again. I think that's important.
www.openstates.org. You put in your address, you'll find out who your state representative as well as your state senator, and engage that individual. A lot of times you have constituents that say, well, I called or I emailed, and that's good. We definitely are going to respond. But when you get a heat from your state senator, your state representative, I need you to come to the Capitol on this issue. As well as anybody and everyone up here knows, we have our committee hearings. It is probably the only opportunity for citizens to be heard before members of the General Assembly. We're not like county officials and our city council colleagues where we have public comments. Committee is the time you have public comments, and traditionally, committee heads will give 2 or 3 minutes to individuals to speak. And if you come in there on an issue and you can pack that committee room out on an issue that's important for not only your community but for the citizens of the state of Georgia, it sends a sign to that committee chairman and that committee vice chairman and the majority members on that committee. So the only way that I could say to really be heard here on the state level, not the only way, but one way, is to reach out to your legislator. And if you hear the call to come participate in a committee hearing, please come to the state capitol and do that and be heard.
One thing I would say is that consistency matters, and I think about the constituents in my district who are the most effective advocates for the causes that they care about. I don't just hear from them in the legislative session. I hear from them year-round.
Year-round.
So if I see them, I know right away that, what their issue is. And that's how you can really, if there's something you're passionate and care about, it's certainly important to come when called and to reach out to legislators, but to remember that advocacy is a year-round pastime.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to reach out even when we're not here.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I think that to your point, Roger, and not just your constituents. In the committee sub-hearings, it is important for us and for the citizens of the committee chair to come up, especially the issues that are germane to your district. So a lot of times, like you said, if my members from my constituents come up from my district, it's one thing. They know me, I know them. But it's another thing if what's the guy, Ed Reiner's district, who's going to have these voting machines, if they come up here and say, man, what you're doing is wrong, it'll change the whole dynamic. So people in Ed Reiner's district, y'all come on up here real soon, okay?
What we did not talk about, which I think we should before we wrap it up, is healthcare.
Oh, yeah.
I know you mentioned briefly about Medicaid expansion. But it's more than just that. We have a lot of issues around healthcare. Hospitals have shut down around the state. Let's talk about that some and see what kind of remedies we can come up with right quick.
So, Medicaid expansion, while not a panacea for all healthcare problems in Georgia, does touch on a lot of issues. It touches on the mental health access. It touches on the opioid crisis for people who need access to treatment. But one of the other big conversations that we expect to have in the legislative session is the issue of certificate of need.
Yes.
Okay.
Where
Explain what that is.
Well, hospitals basically have to go through the Department of Community Health and obtain a certificate if they're looking to expand in certain practice areas or build a new hospital. And there is legislation to either completely repeal that or to limit that process. And we have some vulnerable hospitals. And changing that regulatory framework is dangerous if we don't also address the issue of uninsured Georgians and the $3 billion we're leaving on the table from federal money from Medicaid expansion.
Okay, and how does that reflect in how we're dealing with healthcare in these rural areas? And this whole issue around the marijuana.
Yeah, so man, that's a big question. But the number one thing is that if you so there are two things. I think that let me separate those two questions out. So there's medical marijuana, and then there's certificate of need. Certificate of need. The problem with that, the fundamental problem right now is people have the chance to cherry pick the patients they want.
Yes.
And so if you have a healthy population, you get to cherry pick people with the best insurance. And a lot of times those folk who don't either have insurance, right, or are on Medicaid, you don't take them. The real issue is, and this is where the problem is with Medicaid expansion, why you got to have it, is the number one predictor of a poor outcome, health-wise, is whether you have insurance or not. It's not genetics. It's not whether you have money. It's none of that. It's not your socioeconomic whatever. It's do you have insurance is the number one predictor of a poor outcome. If you don't, your outcome will be bad. And so it is important for the state of Georgia to really look at comprehensively how do we make sure that all Georgians have health care.
Okay.
And it's a basic fundamental right.
It's a right.
It's a right.
Not a
privilege.
privilege.
It's right.
You know, it's always interesting. You know, we have people battling about the idea of everybody having to have health care coverage. And I've just found it to be, I didn't understand the argument because we're being forced to buy car insurance. Why not health insurance? I mean, I'm not sure I get it. But we're going to, kind of move to another thing. As you know, we've been doing this live. And we've got a couple of folks that have sent some questions for you guys. Okay. Steve, we can't see you, but you can see us. But Steve H, he wants to know what you guys think about trying to help everybody that was impacted by the hurricane, and not just the farmers. You know, there are people who had positions or businesses that were harmed, just like the farmers were harmed. So his question is, what can we do to help everybody that was impacted?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think we would certainly have an intent to try to help people in a region where literally people lost everything in some cases. I think that I don't have the silver bullet answer as to how to help everyone, but there certainly would be an appetite to try to help people in need of assistance.
And I would say when we were summoned back to the Capitol last November by then Governor Nathan Deal, every Democratic House member voted in favor of hurricane relief for Hurricane Michael for South and Southwest Georgia. And the House Democrats, we're always behind helping any and everyone that needs any type of assistance, and we would definitely champion or support any legislation that would do that.
And just specifically, if you could contact the Department of Community Affairs. That's who you want to contact, Steve. So Department of Community Affairs is who you want to contact because we set aside money for not just hurricane victims, but their tax credits that we put out there as well. So if your property was damaged, please contact the Department of Community Affairs. I think it's a good place to start.
Can I make one point about hurricanes that is sort of, I think, an important, the issue of climate change is a reality, and we are entering a phase where we are paying the price for inattention to that on a policy level, and more so nationally. But the issue of disaster relief is something that we're going to face. It's not a one-time thing.
Right.
These storms are in greater intensity and will occur with more frequency. So we've got to really think proactively about how we're going to respond as a state.
Okay. Well, Deborah C. has also sent in a question. If we're going to expand Medicaid in the state, we're going to need more medical professionals, technicians, to be able to accommodate that. So she wants to know if she can start training tomorrow, and whether or not we have a way to help her with that training starting tomorrow. Technical training, medical technical training. So, what you guys got to say?
So maybe to send an email so we can send some information about how to get her pointed in the right direction. But on the issue, she's absolutely right with respect to the increased need for medical professionals. And there was a study from a Georgia State law professor on the impact of Medicaid expansion, and it talked about the economic impact and that expansion could create as many as 56,000 healthcare jobs
Okay.
as a result of expansion.
Yeah, I think the way, I'm looking at the rest of her question. Can certificates at technical colleges be the certification itself, as opposed to have to going through? And I don't know the answer to that question.
I guess I could just kind of chime in on the now.
Kind of like getting the law to be.
Exactly, and that's pretty much dictated by the Secretary of State. Is some certificates may automatically certify you, but like you said earlier, Roger, being a lawyer, you have to go to law school and graduate law school, but then you have to take the bar. And the same for professions like, barber license. You have to take the training, go to barber school or a technical school, but then you still have to take the SOS test as well. So I don't think necessarily just by going for medical purposes, depending on what type of medical technician she wants to be.
Take it to the next
Yeah,
level.
you have to take it to the next level in the state of Georgia. And that office where you take the exam with the Secretary of State is down in Macon.
Okay.
And it's Macon office.
I guess it's one thing to know, the ABCs
Yeah,
of it, but it's something else to know, okay, if I stick you with this needle in the wrong spot.
exactly,
So you won't be
exactly.
certified. Okay. And we got Mark P. He says, if you could pick just two of the things that we've been talking about to get passed, which two would it be and why?
I think for me, it would be Medicaid expansion for sure. And then the second for me would be the idea of the voting machines. And we had hand-marked, verifiable paper ballots. Those two things, if we pull those two things off, I think that Georgia's going to benefit for many years to come.
Okay.
Medicaid expansion for the same reason the chair stated, but also the leader pre-filed a bill, anti-purging bill, voting bill that I would love to see passed because our county one of the counties we represent, Fulton County, was decimated. I think we had about 44,000 voters to be illegally purged from the voter rolls in Fulton County. So I think that is a huge issue that we need to address.
Okay.
And those are my picks as well. Medicaid expansion and the purging bill. So Medicaid expansion is, again, House Bill 37. The purging bill is House Bill 6. And, the number of voters that were purged from the roll in Georgia, this is a widely reported number, but we lost 1 million voters.
Yeah.
And you think about the impact of that. And after I pre-filed it, I got, somebody looked, and somebody's always going to throw rocks at you for your
right.
legislation. And he said, well, we don't need dead people voting and people who've moved. But here's the thing. We have separate statutes that require and address the issue of removal of deceased voters, and we also have a separate statute that addresses the removal of moved voters. So the core intent of the mass purge is just to make the roll smaller,
Okay.
and that's undemocratic.
Well, I agree with you guys on all the ones you said, but I want to add one.
Okay.
If we could.
Okay.
I think that this $26 billion budget that we have needs to be spent using different companies
Yeah.
and making sure that every citizen in the state has a chance to participate in that, in these contracts. We're giving away a lot of money, but we give it to the same people all the time. And I just think that we need to promote our small businesses, our minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, and I would
Yes.
add that to the list.
Yes.
Any last thing before we wrap it up, guys? I think we covered a lot of territory today.
Good job.
And I appreciate you guys coming on and talking with me.
Thanks for having us.
And I hope that this is going to be the first of many good opportunities to talk. You guys are welcome to come back anytime. We're going to be doing it every week. Is there anything that you want to say to kind of
No.
wrap it up?
Great show, man. I mean, yeah, it's fantastic. We appreciate you doing it, Representative Bruce. Good job.
Again, Representative Bruce, great show. Just a great way to keep our citizens in the state of Georgia engaged. So I appreciate your dedication to doing this every Friday.
Every Friday. Every
Do
Friday.
a session with it. I know it's tough on you.
Every Friday.
Thank you so much, and just remember, we're early. It's a 40-day legislative session, and it moves fast. But
Yeah, we on day
4, we just
Four.
finished.
Just
Just
4
stay
going
finished
into
day
5
4.
on Tuesday.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So with that, We are glad that you had an opportunity to participate. Once again, say your name one more time.
James Beverly.
William Boddie.
Bob Trammell.
And Roger Bruce. And we're saying welcome to Under the Gold Dome.